Selamat pagi. It is wonderful to be back here in Indonesia for my fourth visit as Prime Minister, but my first bilateral visit of the second term. I chose Indonesia as the destination for this first visit very consciously, just as I did after the 2022 election. The relationship between Australia and Indonesia is so important. Important for our defence and security, important for our economic future, and important for the region. Indonesia will grow to be the fifth largest economy in the world by the end of the next decade. What that represents is an enormous opportunity to grow our economic relationships, which is why in our first term we commissioned Nicholas Moore to do the Southeast Asia Economic Strategy to 2040. What that did was outline the series of opportunities that will be there for investment in Southeast Asia, but also for investment back in Australia, for improving the relationships between our two great nations. And I must say that I was very honoured last night that President Prabowo came to the hotel here and we sat down with our foreign ministers as well for just an informal chat prior to the one-on-one leaders meeting that we'll hold this morning. It said something about the depth of the relationship and the extent of the friendship and warm relationship between our two nations, but also my warm relationship with the President, that he came here, sat in the hotel room, and we had a really good chat about elections, about the state of the world, and it was a great honour, and we certainly saw it as such. Today's visit is an important step forward in the relationship. This morning we will have a one-on-one leaders meeting, and then we'll have our dialogue between our respective teams, and that's why the presence of the Foreign Minister here, as well as the Minister for Home Affairs, is so important. The economic relationship between our two countries, I think, will continue to grow. It's important to recognise, as I did on previous visits, we discussed this last night, that of course Indonesia isn't just Jakarta or Java. It is the extraordinary archipelago, the diverse country and the extraordinary nation that represents one of the world's largest democracies. That is so important as we go forward. I'll ask Penny and then Tony to make some comments, and we're happy to take a few questions.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Can I say what an honour it is to accompany you and Minister Burke here to Jakarta again, and how wonderful it is to be back in Indonesia. As the Prime Minister said, Indonesia is just so important to Australia. It is so important to Australia bilaterally in terms of our relationship, our economic relationship, our strategic relationship. It's so important to Australia in our region because Indonesia is the largest country in ASEAN, the country whose leadership ASEAN looks to. And at a time of global uncertainty, what I would also say is that we recognise, the Albanese government, that our security and our stability comes from our region and from our relationships. We see Indonesia as critical to navigating this time of global uncertainty. We know that economic resilience matters. It always matters, and it matters even more so in a world which is more uncertain and more turbulent. And you build your economic resilience with stronger regional relationships. The sorts of work that the Prime Minister is discussing, the economic relationship as well as the strategic relationship with Indonesia. Our two nations share a bond of history, we share a bond of partnership, but we also are partners for the future. And I'm very excited at the opportunity of advancing that cooperation in this second term of the Albanese government.
Thanks very much. It's an absolute pleasure and privilege to be back in Indonesia, and of course a particular privilege to be here joining with the Prime Minister on this specific delegation. As Minister for Home Affairs, it's my third time in this portfolio here in Indonesia. When I was first put in the portfolio, I flew here the day I was sworn in. This time we've flown here the day after the new ministry was sworn in. Across all the areas of Home Affairs, I've been in touch with my counterparts who've all sent warm messages following the election. The relationship across every part of Home Affairs with Indonesia is incredibly important. That goes across the Home Affairs and counter-terrorism areas, through to matters regarding people smuggling and other forms of trafficking, all the way through to cyber security as well. The relationship is one of partnership. It's one where the partnership with Indonesia is incredibly important to Australia, and one where I'm looking forward to being able to continue the strength of that relationship as part of this visit. Thanks, Prime Minister.
Prime Minister.
Sure.
Prime Minister, the President's team has talked about looking for some concrete agreements to come out of this trip. What sort of agreements would they be, and what are you hoping to come out of this visit?
We're talking about further strengthening our defence ties, and also how we put our economic partnership, how we can build on that with investment. I look forward to the discussions that I'll have with the President in a formal sense, one-on-one this morning.
Prime Minister, do you think Russia would have requested today's long-range bombers from Qatar if Donald Trump had been elected?
You're asking me a question about Russia and Donald. Look, my job is to represent Australia's national interests. What's important is that we respect, of course, Indonesia's sovereignty. Indonesia made it very clear what their position was on that.
But do you think they would have felt game enough to do that if there was a different administration?
Indonesia made clear its position.
Prime Minister, in January, Indonesia formally joined BRICS, pretty significant multilateral move on their part. How are you going to balance the ties that you want to build, particularly in the defence space, the interoperability that you talked about in the partnership, with this sort of push into that particular grouping of nations?
By investing in our capability and investing in our relationships. So, for example, there is some defence training exercises taking place in Australia from Indonesian military. That's an important practical way that we step forward. When I was last a minister in the government, we provided extensive training in maritime, in aviation, in security-related matters. And an organisation like AMSA, for a country like Indonesia, which is an archipelago of islands, maritime security and maritime issues are particularly important. So we can play a really important role there. I'll just go round.
Concerns from civil society groups here that under President Prabowo, Indonesia is actually losing a lot of the democratic gains that it's made since the Suharto era. He's also spoken about the economy. Indonesia's middle class actually shrank last year. So do you have any concerns that both economically and politically Indonesia may not be trending in the right direction?
I think President Prabowo was elected overwhelmingly in what was a really important democratic process here in Indonesia, and that should be respected. President Prabowo is someone who, we talked about this last night informally, of course it wasn't the first time he has run. He's someone who's resilient, someone who received overwhelming support for his ticket. This is a multi-party democracy. I think last night they came up with 24 different political parties. It makes our Senate look orderly by comparison. And so, I think we should celebrate the democracy here. And global inflation had an impact on the global economy. It had an impact on Australia. It had an impact right around the world. And whilst the opposition in Australia didn't seem to acknowledge that, everyone else in the world did. We've come through turbulent economic times. Global inflation, the biggest global inflation spike since the 1980s, and the biggest energy crisis since the 1970s. And as a result, what we saw was pressure on economies globally. Australia wasn't immune from that, nor were countries of Southeast Asia.
Has the President told you what exactly the Russians have asked for or didn't ask for in regards to warplanes in Papua? You say their position is clear, but I'm just wondering if he has briefed you on exactly what they have said to him and what they've requested.
Well, importantly, they've made public what their position is.
Prime Minister, how important is it for Australia to resist Moscow's attempt at having greater influence in Indonesia and the region?
But we'll continue to invest in our capability, and President Prabowo has acknowledged the important arrangements that we've put in place as a sovereign nation with AUKUS. But in addition to that, we're building our capability and defence arrangements and security arrangements with countries like Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, the Philippines and other countries in our region. In addition to that, we are investing in our relationships. That's one of the reasons why I am here. That is so important. Now, Russia, of course, will try to increase its influence. We make very clear our position when it comes to Russia around the world, be it the brutal invasion of Ukraine, its interference in cybersecurity issues as well, its tolerance of criminal organisations that have been involved in that, are anathema to our values. We'll continue to stand up for Australian values, and that is something that we'll do both domestically but right around the world. Chloe?
The earlier question about the warplane. We know that Indonesia's answer is no, but was the question asked?
Indonesia's answer is no. They've made it very clear. They've made it very clear. Not for me to comment on what occurs between countries that are not Australia. What is important is Australia's position. Our position's clear. Indonesia's position is clear as well.
Prime Minister, would Australia back Indonesia's move to the CPTPP? Does Australia believe that would be a good thing? And can I ask also, I'm sorry, Foreign Minister, I'm Dr. Young from June. You said, I think to the ABC yesterday, you think the move by the extraordinary level of the his review. Do you have any reflections on that? And do you have any prospect of any sort of activity?
On the first, the way that the CPTPP works is it needs to be by consensus. Countries can apply, and then it is worked through as part of a process, and those issues will be worked through. On Dr. Young, can I say that I was also written to Dr. Young. It was a message of profound courage and resilience and hope despite his difficult circumstances, and we continue to advocate for Dr. Young's interests and well-being at every opportunity, and I have certainly asked our ambassador to convey that very directly to Dr. Young.
The Prime Minister has covered it.
At the end, will you raise Russia?
I'll meet with President Prabowo shortly, and I look forward to the one-on-one discussion. We raise a range of issues. The way that we engage diplomatically is just that. Thanks very much.
And that was